to realize our need for God, to make time to spend alone time with Him, that we wouldn't need a priest or a preacher because God gave us a Savior, that gave us access to a Father, that when we submit to a process, not of our making, but of His, we can be initiated as men into true masculinity, that we can be led by Him so we learn how to lead, that we can be loved by Him so we learn how to love. This is Ponds and Beavers.
Hey guys, so I'm just going to get right into it. I've had kind of the same sort of, you can call it a topic or theme, just staying in my head, in my heart, and it's really simple. It's basically God speaking to us. I've written songs lately about that specific thing. I feel like a lot more than normal. The fact that not only is He speaking, but that we can hear Him clearly, that we know it's Him, but we need to acknowledge and trust and believe that it's Him. And the difference between that and hearing God speak and kind of allowing the devil to second guess that. We see that in Jesus when He was in the wilderness. The devil is saying, oh, well, maybe you should do this instead, or maybe this is a better option. Basically getting Jesus to forsake being obedient to the Father. And then you see that again in long before that, however long before that, but in the garden, when the devil was saying things like, did God really say that? And I really do, more than ever, believe and just know deep down in my heart that is our greatest battle. It's not so much that we can't hear God speak, but that He's already speaking to us. Why wouldn't He speak to us? And I think I just did a message on that a couple weeks ago, but why wouldn't God be speaking to us if we're His children, right? And we're His sheep, right? Jesus said out of His words that His sheep know His voice, right? And it's on us to either obey. We have a free will, so it's on us to either obey, to trust that, to believe it, to say, God, that's you. And so, you see that in the garden, though, that the devil is always wanting us to second guess. Is it really God? And then our response is, well, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. So maybe it's not God. Or, no, it's probably not God because it's kind of crazy. So maybe. And it's like, me and Terry, my wife, talked about this kind of recently about, the fact that look at what God has his children do. Look at Moses. Look at, Noah. Look at Noah. I mean, you just look at just about every person in the Bible that we tend to idolize or sort of admire or put on these pedestals. And then we look at ourselves as sort of lesser humans or lesser children, right? Like those are all God's favorite children. We're just kind of like the stepchildren that, He puts up with. It's like, no, that's not how God operates, right? When you're His, you're His. And I think the important thing for us to, whether we like it or not, to stand firm on is the fact that God is already speaking to us, and we have to believe and trust that it's Him, and then to obey it, to obey what He's putting in our hearts to do. And guys, I don't want to get kind of weird or political or whatever you want to call it, but man, we're living in some somewhat crazy times, considering I just had a conversation with my neighbor, and I'm thinking, man, I'm 37 years old. We're about to be in. I've never seen anything this crazy before. And he was like, well, I'm 80 something years old and I've never seen things get this crazy before. And I'm like, man, what something is going on. And, it's important, more important than us preparing, gathering food or, getting this and that and preparing in all these ways, the most important thing that we can do is to gain the practice, the skill, the lifestyle, just how we live from day to day, hearing God's voice like we already do, and actually acknowledging it Acknowledging that, first of all, He's right here with us. And then acknowledging the things that He's already speaking. What desires is God putting in your heart? What desires is He giving you? Is He, or what ideas? What ideas are that you know deep down are not coming from you, but you discard them? I discard them so easily because they just seem a little too crazy. Not real crazy, just a little too out there that you don't want to entertain it at all. And we've got plenty of excuses. Well, I don't have the financial ability, or, it's not in the budget, or, to do this, or to pursue this, or to do, and unfortunately, especially for us guys, that's typically our first response is, can I afford to do this? And my response would be, and really God's response, and really it should be Him, because I do this too, is the right response for the Father should be, can you afford not to do this? Can you afford to be disobedient? Can you afford to not obey? Because me and Terry wrote something down that God showed us years ago, and we have it up on the wall, and it's basically, you're crazy until you're not crazy. That's the way it is following God. That's the reality of the life that Noah led, Moses, David, all these guys that had to, Abraham, who had to follow God into the unknown. Some of them not even tasting the full promise, but just out of obedience did they follow God into maybe just a glimpse of the promise. And it wasn't until their kids grew up that they got to experience the promise, or maybe generations later. Is that how we're thinking? Are we thinking generationally, or are we thinking temporary? Because the devil wants us to be sheep. Dumb animals like sheep only think about the now moments, and that's it. They don't think about the cliff they're about to walk off, or, the wolves that they're about to run into as they stray away, and kind of like, because they want just some, certain kind of grass. No, that makes us dumb and vulnerable, okay? That's not what God wants for us. He wants us to follow Him. He's the shepherd. We are not our own shepherds. So we cannot be arrogant to think that we ought to lead and run our own life, guys. It's obedience every day. That's it. That is it in a nutshell. Now, is God putting it on your heart to maybe, while you're at the grocery store, buy a few extra groceries just in case? Then do it. But that's not the point. The point is that without His voice and your trust and belief in His voice and obeying Him, knowing that, you know what, God, this is you. And even if I'm wrong, you're going to be merciful and loving with that. But I guarantee it's probably Him, right? Especially times that we're in now. Why would God play games with us, right? Training's over, guys. Going to church and learning about God is over. We've got to be living this out now. Everything you've learned, guess what? You've learned enough. Now it's time to live it out. Your family is going to depend. Your family depends on it. Friends depend on it. You have no idea who God's going to put around you to maybe take care of during some potential hard times. Now, again, we don't know when. It could be in our children's lifetime. It could be right now. It may not be as bad for us because we do have God. I don't know what it's going to look like. And guess what? That's not the point. None of us do. That's not how it works. It's just hearing God, listening to Him speak, and then just obeying, acting on it, right? When I tell my son to do something, like go around an ant pile, I'm saying that for his sake. Now, he can hear me, but not do it because he's in his own little, workspace, kind of like bubble zone thought process, and he ignores me, walks through the ant pile, and gets stung by a bunch of ants, and then he's sitting there crying, and I'm like, son, I told you to go around that ant pile. Well, guess what? He learned a hard lesson. But my question is this: do we need to learn that hard lesson? Do we need to learn the hard way? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we know a little too much about God. We've been to a little too many church services, or heard too many sermons, or heard God speak too many times and seen God move in our life, seen Him do miracles in our life. We don't want to be like the Israelites, where we get amnesia all of a sudden. We want to operate in obedience because we know better, guys. We know better, right? We are His sheep, right? We hear His voice. God knows us, and we follow Him. That's how we ought to live, right? Those are the words of Jesus, and that's the truth. And so, guys, I'm going to challenge you as I'm being challenged myself by this. What is God putting in your heart? And what are we ignoring because it doesn't make sense, or because it doesn't line up with, or it doesn't satisfy the excuses, and it, it doesn't negate the excuses we have? No. What is He putting in your heart? Is it to maybe plant some potatoes, or maybe spend more time with your kids, right? Just because you're in the proximity of your children doesn't mean you're actually in that moment with them, spending time with them, right? Or spend more time with your wife. Whatever He's putting in your heart, whether it's going out to get ammo, or taking your kid fishing, or taking them to a movie, or doing something that God's putting in your heart, guys, let's be courageous and obedient, right? Courageous obedience. There it is, courageous obedience. Doing the thing that no one else is doing. Because guess what? When crap hits the fan, we're going to be the lions among men that we are meant to be, not the sheep among men. Now, we can be a sheep among God. Before God, we are absolute sheep. But before men, where are the lions? This is how it works. You want to be a lion? Obey God. Act. Have the courage to do what God's putting in your heart to do, right? Like I say every time, make time to get alone, get away and get alone with God. Just get alone with God, guys. Hear Him speak. Be absolutely 100% in that moment with Him. 5 minutes spent with God is the best 5 minutes you'll ever spend in your life or in your day, right? We can handle a day, right? So anyways, thanks for listening, and spend time with God, guys. Get alone, get away, spend time with God. So anyways, see ya.